Please be advised this video contains a lot of flashing imagery. This video is intended for adult collectors only and is not made for children. Thank you. This boy has been on quite the journey. It was originally found by Jax on Facebook Marketplace for just 10 Australian dollars. And then it came up again on eBay, and we worked together to win the auction at a fraction of what these things have been predicted to cost. You can tell that it's the same one because the buyer on Facebook Marketplace did actually try and clean up the neck, which they did a pretty good job all things considered, but the neck ended up being one of the most problematic parts of the refurbishment. So then we flat packed him, he flew with me out to Perth, and then from Perth we flew all the way back to London. We then travelled all over the UK, to my hometown, and then back to Liverpool, so he's definitely got some mileage on him. Anyway, I'll stop dilly-dallying, on to the refurb. My fears were confirmed. I was worried that I'd have to remove the whole neck in order to fix the collar. I hoped that the collar wasn't attached, but as you can see here, when I started detaching the collar, it's also started detaching the head. Which means in order to fix this and redo all the leather paint on this collar, I'm going to have to detach his entire head in order to do so. That is quite concerning, and it's going to make this a bigger job than I anticipated. Just thinking out loud here as to how I could possibly pull this off. I would probably have to detach the head from the body, reseal this slit that I was initially going to use to restuff it, take the collar off completely, set it to the side, same with the tag, because I don't know if this material is also the same sort of flaky leather that this is. Wash the body part, wash the head part, get all of this red off of here. Take some leather paint, try and colour match to this colour of leather. Get some fabric, paint, sealant, just completely redo the collar. Rebuild the skeleton out of like the lightweight plastic stuff that I was planning to use. Restuff the body with the skeleton inside. Restuff the head. And use the middle part that I don't have on me at the moment that I kept to attach the head to the body internally. And then use some kind of ladder stitch around the whole neck. Completely reattach the neck. And then reattach the collar separately, probably using some kind of Velcro, or maybe just completely resew it back on. I'm not too sure, but I kind of want it to be modular for washing, and then that means I can re-add the tag. This is going to be one heck of a project. I had no idea at the time just how right I was about that. I was putting a lot of faith in myself at this point to not screw things up when I was literally pulling the head off one of the most rarest things in the world. Bolt collectors watching this were probably pained, but it's okay because it all comes together in the end. I quickly swapped the blade out on my Stanley knife and then carried on cutting. I had to be so delicate, removing each individual thread rather than trying to cut into the fur itself because I wanted as much of that seam allowance to remain as possible. You would not believe how sticky and horrible that collar was when I finally got it off. It was such a weird material and it literally stuck to your fingers, as you'll see later in the video. It was absolutely disgusting. At this stage, I'm just pulling out a lot of the loose threads and just making sure that everything's all cleaned up and nice, which all turned out to be completely pointless in the end anyway, as you'll see, but you'll see what happens with the collar later in the video, and through no fault of my own. With the head and the body detached like this and everything cleaned up, this is the part where I'm really having to tell myself to trust the process because I'm very nervous, as you can imagine. The history behind these is astronomical, as is their rarity. Not to mention it looks really ominous with the neck part having that ominous red stain. But this was definitely a necessary part of the process. You can see this collar's absolutely knackered. My hands are sticky. You probably can't see, but you can see, well, kind of. See those flakes? It's just flaking. It's just falling off. The tag itself has these red stains on as well. This collar just wasn't fit for purpose, and to re-put it back together with this same collar without doing at least a little bit of work on it would be disingenuous to the whole project. The whole point of this restoration is to take something that is super immensely rare and make it even better than it was before, and this is just part of the process. Alright, fill this up with 1 laundry pod, some warm water. Trust the process. Got 1. We got 2. I've done a lot of plush refurbishing in my time, but I have never cleaned one quite this dirty before. It was both gross and extremely satisfying to see all of the dirt come out of him at the end. He really needed it. Look at that. Look at all that. Oh, that's nasty. Another warning for the flashing lights here. After rinsing the bath, I then went over with what was actually quite an impulse decision. I didn't really think to use bleach until I actually saw it on the side of the bath, and I thought, you know what? I could try it, because obviously it bleaches to white. Obviously this decision was not taken lightly, and obviously it was done incredibly carefully. But I'm glad that I tried it, because honestly this was the big game changer when it came to the outcome. I really don't think I would have got that red staining in the neck out without it. So, after all that, this is the best I could possibly get it, which, compared to how it was before, is almost unnoticeable. When it has another collar on top, hopefully it shouldn't be noticeable. This is with 2 rounds of bleach, 2 washes, 2 dries. I've managed to not cross-contaminate the bleach with any other part of the head or body, by the looks of it. But we're not done with this part yet, because I need to spin it now. Get this as wrung out dry as possible by squeezing all the pores. You can see the size of this lad just by looking at the paw in my hand. Here's how the other half of the neck came out. Again, it's not perfect, but it's down there close as I could get. So with all these parts, wrap it up in a towel. I'm gonna go and take him to the washing machine to spin. In the meantime, I took the tag over to go and do the same thing, just using bleach to get rid of that red staining from the fabric. You may wonder at this point why I'm choosing to brush it now rather than later whilst it's all stuffed. You always have to brush wet fur whilst it is still wet. Otherwise it's going to go clumpy, it's going to go weird. You just have to brush it at every stage, but especially the first time that it's wet. That's the only way to get it to go completely fluffy again. And this applies to any faux fabric, honestly. And now just to leave them to dry. Tomorrow's going to be the collar and maybe the skeleton. This is going to take multiple days to reassemble, I know that for sure. Don't mind the giant Scooby, your days are numbered. So now's a trip down to my local B&Q to go and get the skeleton parts. I found these little corner joiners that were perfect for putting them together. It did look a little bit silly bringing it home on the bus. This was my first attempt at cutting the pieces and making them join together. As you can see, I was using just a Stanley knife. It was really dangerous. I was in a lot of pain. It wasn't really working for me and I was struggling. A lot of the techniques shown in this video definitely aren't to be repeated because they weren't the right way to go about it. At that point I was just kind of winging it. It was late at night and I was tired. My hands were hurting. I really just wanted this part of the process done. I've managed to get the front legs of the skeleton done, as you can see here. However, my calculations were wrong. I didn't do the maths right, and I've not got enough pipe to finish the back half of the skeleton. So I guess that means I'm back to B&Q tomorrow. Yeah, I know, I'm that guy who wears shorts in the snow, but it needed to be bought. I decided to be somewhat sensible this time around and I actually bought a saw. The way that I'm using it is still incredibly unsafe and should not be repeated. This was just the way that worked for me. It definitely shouldn't be working this way for you. Always use tools at a proper workbench. And don't saw right between the middle of your legs. Anyway, that's the skeleton done. This is the bit that I was really looking forward to. Putting it all together. Putting the skeleton inside the arms and legs and slowly beginning to make his shape take form. Initially I did have the feet right at the bottom of his feet. I don't know what happened, and I don't know how they slid up in the process, but initially they were right at the bottom, and this process worked really well for me, especially with the legs being modular, where I could take those pieces apart and put them back together. As I was going, I was taking the tops off and putting them back on and just stabilizing it, then putting a bag in the way to try and stabilize it, and realizing that was really bad with the time lapse. I do eventually move it again, but this was the stage where everything was finally starting to come together. I was starting to see the vision again. I was starting to have hope, where I was starting to lose it a little bit. Everything was finally starting to come together. I'm gonna speed through the rest of this time lapse because honestly, there's not really much more to say about this section that I haven't already said. So continue to watch. Gonna interrupt the music here to try and explain what I'm doing next. I'm using clips to close up that slit in his back, and then I'm using a ladder stitch to close that entire slit shut. It's imperative that you use a ladder stitch so that the stitching's hidden inside. I wasn't done with the stuffing bit at this point, I just needed to close that gap in the back so that I could carry on the process a little bit easier. I'm gonna speed through the time lapse once more because this part just took so long, honestly. It's very satisfying to see it all come together. So we're up to this stage now. He's actually standing. The skeleton's a little bit bodge, it comes apart sometimes, but it definitely worked. It's got this headless monstrosity that yet to have a head, but I've got most of it done. It's a little bit lumpy. I found a popped seam here as well that I'm gonna need to go in and fix at the end. I think it's down there. But otherwise, upright, standing, a little bit stiff, a tiny bit lumpy, but I think it's coming along good. Making good progress.
When else am I going to get the chance to do this?
I'll bet this looks really silly. There's no other chance I'll ever get to do this. Alright, silly breakover. I put that pillow that was inside of his neck back on, and then I restuffed the head. At this stage I was getting kind of nervous because I knew what part was coming up next, and I wasn't looking forward to it. We've reached the point where it's going to become very complex. That little pillow thing you saw during the time lapse was included in the initial plush. That was the neck support. Now, the head is stuffed, it's placed on the neck. I can't finish stuffing the neck until I've sewn it back together, so it's constantly going to be flopping forward. I'm nervous as to whether it's even going to like stay upright. I'm assuming once it's sewn to the back, even just me holding it there and pinning it down does show that it will stay, so I think I'll probably start with that, sew it and secure it at the back of the head here, and then I will work my way around with some kind of loose ladder stitch. I can't even talk anymore, I'm so stressed out. Then I'll finish restuffing the neck completely once it's actually attached. And here goes that part that I was dreading. I started clipping everything together and then slowly starting that ladder stitch at the back just to secure it in place, making sure his head wasn't flopping forward, making sure that everything was sturdy, and then just slowly worked my way around, just delicately, taking my time, making sure that there was seam allowance the whole time. I did lose a little bit of the length of his neck in this process, which is unfortunate. His head is slightly like to the left or to the right, I can't remember which, but during the process I was sewing and then I was also stuffing as I was going around. I think at one point I might have just gotten a bit confused and I did stuff a little bit more on one side than the other, so it is a tiny bit lopsided, but all credit due, you know, I think I did an alright job considering the scale of the project. Anyway, enough glazing myself. As you can see, I was using clips all around the side of the neck just to keep me in check and just to keep him in line. I think it was working, I like to think that it was. As I was going round, I was removing the clips, adding stuffing, At around the halfway mark, I think I was finally finding my flow and I was getting a bit more confident. And I think that's the part where you see where his neck starts to extend again because I'd found the edge of the seam and I'd found the seam allowance. So it is a bit unfortunate that some of the neck did get lost in the process, but again, I just think with the scale of the project that it is, I think I did an okay job. This was easily the most daunting part of the process that I wasn't looking forward to, and I was so glad that it was finally over. Just closing up everything here while the white balance flashbangs you, and then we're pretty much done. Oh yeah, I forgot about this bit. You remember earlier when I said that the, quote, feet didn't go all the way down to the feet? It was the ends of the skeleton that didn't completely seal to the bottom anymore for some reason. I guess the skeleton had shifted up during the stuffing process. So this was just me opening a couple of small seams in each wrist just so I can stuff more stuffing in there, I guess, and just hope that that would solidify everything enough just to keep him stable. It's unfortunately one of the parts I'm more disappointed with. Also, just quickly using a closing ladder stitch on that little open pop seam just to close it all shut. And he stands! Oh my lord, this was a lot of work. But he's standing. This is basically the job done. Aside from the collar, obviously. The skeleton's not perfect. It's very creaky. The extensions don't go down all the way to the paws anymore, hence why I had to extend the stuffing, which probably isn't going to hold up long term. You can see that it's kind of bowing already. That's basically the best that I could do without taking the whole thing apart again, which I obviously didn't want to do. But he's standing again. Very tall. The tail sticks out nicely. The neck, the red's basically gone because it's either hidden by the seam or the bleach did its job. It's a little bit untidy on this side, but that's all going to be covered up by the collar anyway, so it doesn't really matter. There he is. Standing, probably for the first time since 2009, and no matter how far back I go, he's still not entirely in frame. Wow, what a masterpiece. All that's left for you now is your collar, which I ordered the leather paints off Amazon, and I'm a cheap so I didn't want to pay for premium. They're not coming until Tuesday, so he's gonna have to be naked until then. Honestly, we're going to skip out most of the collar stuff because genuinely, I spent like 2 or 3 days just on the collar alone, and as the next clip is going to explain, it was just a complete bust. It was just a complete waste of my time. It's really unfortunate, but I really did try my best. It is what it is. Unfortunately, the collar, the original collar that the plush came with, is just not usable. I've gone over with, I believe, 3 coats of sealant now. 3 coats. Each one's taken so long to dry. I've done it every single side. All of the sides. Every single part. I'm using this bit of fabric that I found inside Scooby-Doo to do a stress test. I've done several stress tests now to make sure that the paint wasn't coming off. I know that it wouldn't be used like this on the actual plush, it would just be sitting there, but unfortunately that's just like not good enough for me. I would need to know that the paint was completely sealed off. As you can see, they're still red. Even after 3 coats of sealant, I think it's probably something to do with this material type, where the sealant isn't fully sealing and it's not fully adhering, because this isn't actual leather. I'm afraid this is one part of the plush restoration that has failed. I'm not going to be able to keep the original collar that it came with, because it's just going to make the neck red again. I'm not willing to take that risk. I'm going to have to reject authenticity, and I'm going to have to get rid of this collar, and I'm going to have to buy some kind of belt or something to replace it. So I managed to get this belt on sale at Next, after the one that I ordered for him went missing in the post. Standard. Unfortunately, as you can see, it is just like way too big. But I do, by coincidence, have an eyeletting tool, so I'm going to modify it. Just your average upstairs neighbour activities. I left some of this background audio in because I thought it was kind of funny when it was sped up. And here's some quick final footage of me sewing the tag back together. At this stage in the project, I'd waited over a week for the other thing to arrive, and then it didn't. I just wanted this project to be over and done with. He's been in this spot temporarily since I got done with the vast majority of the project, just waiting for me to add the collar pretty much. And I'm finally at a position where I can do that. Let's fluff up his neck so it covers over the collar just like the original. I believe this is the project complete. Finally. For scale comparisons, we've got some of the common jumbo bolts available as well. Here he is next to the 30-inch laying jumbo, the 22-inch sitting jumbo, and the European jumbo. And also, myself. Oh, he's so big. Oh my gosh.